Hi everyone, and welcome to CS 105 Lab 6. This week we are going to be determining if a string is a palindrome. And a palindrome is simply just a word that is spelled the same both forwards and backwards. So just to jump right in, we are going to pull our first line of code from our instructions, which as you can see here, I've circled in red. We can either copy and paste this code or just type it right in. So our string equals our string dot to lowercase with our parentheses and our semicolon. And essentially what this does is just cleans up the string and makes the entire string lowercase. Next, we want to create our for loop. So we're going to be following the same format that we've been using all semester. Starting off with our var I equals 0. You don't have to use I here. You can use x. You can use whatever variable you'd like. I always like to use I. Next we have our I is less than our string dot length. And then finally I plus plus. Now a common mistake people make is separating these different parts of the for loop with commas, but just make sure that those are semicolons. Okay, so now that we've created our for loop, our next step is to create our if statement. And the purpose of our if statement is to check to see if a given position within the string, if the character at that position is equal to the character essentially at the opposite end of the string. So if you look at this visual I've created here, this will help us to understand this if statement a little better. So if we look at the character that's at position 1, so the A, we want to check and see if that character is the same at position 5. So for example, if we want to see if the A, that is the second letter of race car, is the same letter as the second to last character in race car, we can look and see, so we know that A is at position 1. And if we want to check and see if position 1 is equal to position 5, all we have to do is take the length of the string, which is 7, since we start counting at 0. We subtract the position of the first character. So in this case, that first A is at position 1. And then we subtract 1. We should get the number of the position of the second A. So essentially, this is what our if statement is checking. So if we go back to our code, we can create our if statement following the equation we just looked at. If a position within our string, which we denote by using brackets around I, is not equal to our string length, which in our example was 7, minus I, which was the position of whatever character we were matching it against. In our case, it was 1. And then subtract another 1 to find that second position, return false. And then outside of our if statement and also outside of our for loop, we are going to return true. So if that condition is not satisfied, that it is not a palindrome. If the condition is satisfied, then it will be a palindrome. Now the reason we don't check to see if the two are equal and then return true is so that if we have a case such as Alabama, where the first and last characters are the same, but it's not a palindrome, The function will only check that first and last character to determine if it's a palindrome. With this case, it will ensure that it checks each character to make sure that it is indeed a palindrome. Now we can just jump over into our Chrome browser, open up our HTML file that was in our Lab 6 folder, and we can check race car. You can see that race car is a palindrome, so our function is correct. And then, as I mentioned, we just want to check Alabama as well to make sure that our function is not just simply checking the first and last character. As you can see, Alabama is not a palindrome, so our code is correct. And you have completed Lab 6. Good job!